Good morning, boys and girls. Today we're going to listen to Chapter 2 of The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane. So I hope you liked Chapter 1, and we got to meet our main characters, Edward, our fancy, handsome little bunny, and his owner, Abilene, the little girl who takes very good care of him. We met her parents and her grandmother, who lives with them, Pellegrina. So today, I want you to focus on how fiction stories have a positive character and a negative character. So the positive character, the reader tends to root for. We want them to win. We want them to have the happy ending. And the negative character, we tend to want to not win. We don't want them to have the happy ending. We want them to lose or maybe even learn a lesson at the end of the story because they need the lesson. So when we think about Peter Pan, we didn't get to know Hook very much as far as we had gotten in the book, but I think we can understand that Peter is our good character that we root for, and Hook is our bad character because he is so evil and wants to get Peter so badly. And we remember also that Peter was the one who was in favor of fighting fair, which we know is always a good character trait. So for those of you who would like to know, a good character in a fiction book is called a protagonist, and the negative character is the antagonist. I may have used those words before in class. I can't remember. But we are going to read Chapter 2 today, and I want you to be looking for the protagonist, our positive character, and the antagonist, the negative character. And I have a couple pictures to show you before we start. So yesterday, we read Chapter 1, and the picture leading up to Chapter 1 was of Abilene holding Edward's pocket watch. And if you remember, it was a very special gold pocket watch that she put in his pants pocket every morning when she set him up, and she told him to wait until 3 o'clock when she would be home from school. Today's picture to start Chapter 2 is again of Abilene, and this is Edward. And you can see, we talked yesterday about how his eyes are always open because they are painted on eyes, and he's wearing a fancy little shirt with a collar. So let's see what Edward is up to today. Chapter 2. And in this manner, Edward's days passed, one into the other. Nothing remarkable happened. Oh, there was the occasional small domestic drama. Once, while Abilene was at school, the neighbor's dog, a male brindled boxer, inexplicably named Rosie, came into the house uninvited and unannounced and lifted his leg on the dining room table, spraying the white tablecloth with urine. He then trotted over and sniffed Edward. And before Edward even had time to consider the implications of being sniffed by a dog, he was in Rosie's mouth, and Rosie was shaking him back and forth vigorously, growling and drooling. Can you imagine how Edward felt, having a dog do that to him? Fortunately, Abilene's mother walked past the dining room and witnessed Edward's suffering. "Drop it!" she shouted to Rosie. And Rosie, surprised into obedience, did as he was told. Edward's silk suit was stained with drool, and his head ached for several days afterward. But it was his ego that had suffered the most damage. Abilene's mother had referred to him as it, and she was more outraged at the dog urine on her tablecloth than she was about the indignities that Edward had suffered at the jaws of Rosie. Do you remember when we talked about ego with Peter Pan and Hook? And we said that Hook has a very big ego. And we remember that ego was how a person feels about themselves. So from this paragraph, we know that Edward thinks that he is very important. And then there was the time that a maid, new to the Tulane household and eager to impress her employers with her diligence, came upon Edward sitting on his chair in the dining room. "What's this bunny doing here?" she said out loud. Edward did not care at all for the word bunny. He found it derogatory in the extreme. We have a color picture here. Here's Rosie after she had been told to drop it, meaning Edward. And Edward lay on the floor there with his beautiful silk outfit ruined. The maid bent over him and looked into his eyes. She said. She stood back up. She put her hands on her hips. "I reckon you're just like every other thing in this house. Something needing to be cleaned and dusted." And so the maid vacuumed Edward Tulane. She sucked each of his long ears up the vacuum cleaner hose. She pawed at his clothes and beat his tail. She dusted his face with brutality and efficiency. And in her zeal to clean him, she vacuumed Edward's gold pocket watch right off his lap. The watch went into the maw of the vacuum cleaner with a distressing clink that the maid did not even seem to hear. When she was done, she put the dining room chair back at the table. And uncertain about exactly where Edward belonged, she finally decided to shove him in among the dolls on a shelf in Abeline's bedroom. "That's right," said the maid. "There you go." Think back. What did the maid suck up with the vacuum cleaner? Yes, Edward's gold pocket watch. And you remember how important that was? Abeline would set the time every day so that Edward knew when she would be back from school. She left Edward on the shelf at a most awkward and inhuman angle. His nose was actually touching his knees, and he waited there, with the dolls twittering and giggling at him like a flock of demented and unfriendly birds, until Abeline came home from school and found him missing and ran from room to room calling his name. "Edward!" she shouted. "Edward!" There was no way, of course, for him to let her know where he was. No way for him to answer her. He could only sit and wait. When Abeline found him, she held him close, so close that Edward could feel her heart beating, leaping almost out of her chest in its agitation. "Edward," she said. "Oh, Edward, I love you. I never want you to be away from me." The rabbit, too, was experiencing a great emotion. But it was not love. It was annoyance. Remember that vocabulary word? Annoy, and they've added a suffix to it. Annoyance. That he had been so mightily inconvenienced that he had been handled by the maid as cavalierly as an inanimate object. A serving bowl, say, or a teapot. The only satisfaction to be had from the whole affair was that the new maid was dismissed immediately, meaning she was fired. Edward's pocket watch was located later, deep within the bowels of the vacuum cleaner, dented, but still in working condition. It was returned to him by Abeline's father, who presented it with a mocking bow. "Sir Edward," he said, "your timepiece, I believe." The rosy affair and the vacuum cleaner incident, those were the great dramas of Edward's life. Until the night of Abeline's 11th birthday, when, at the dinner table, as the cake was being served, the ship was mentioned. So tomorrow we will read about the ship and what that means. So today we met two characters that we would call the antagonists, the dog and the maid. They were minor characters. They will not be in future chapters, but you can see how characters can be positive and negative. Now let's think back to the one emotion or feeling that Edward does not have. You are right. It is love. So if I go back and read, the rabbit too was experiencing a great emotion, but it was not love. Now, if you remember, Abeline had said, "Oh, Edward, I love you. I never want you to be away from me." So Abeline loves Edward greatly, but Edward, he just doesn't have that feeling of love. Well, maybe he could love someone. Think for a minute who he probably loves the most. I'll bet you said himself, and you are right. He does love himself the most. Think about who you love. Do you love other people in your family? Think about people you might miss if you were ever away from them. I miss you guys, and I am away from you hopefully until April 20th. But I miss you very, very much, and I hope that you are doing lots of reading and some math, and I hope you are enjoying these videos. Tomorrow we will read chapter 3. Be safe, and I hope that your whole family is safe, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.